Welcome to Things You Don't Know.
Tonight, we're telling the story of a man who built an empire when the world insisted he shouldn't even be allowed to own a storefront.
The salesman who became a manufacturer.
A businessman who preached ownership like revival fire.
A black capitalist who believed economic independence was the surest path to dignity and greatest weapon against racism. Tonight, the story of S.B. Fuller.
Wow. Samuel Burke Fuller, better known as S.B. Fuller, who was born in 1905 in Louisiana. His parents were sharecroppers. The Jim Crow South did not offer many lanes for ambition for Black citizens.
Absolutely. And he didn't even finish high school. That's a very important fact here. He did not finish high school. He was no polished Ivy League executive. He was just a man who learned business by watching what worked.
He moved to Chicago with a sixth grade education and $20 in his pocket during the so-called Great Migration after World War I. And Chicago in the 1920s, industrial opportunity, but still segregated markets.
Indeed, he started as a salesman for a company that sold cosmetics and cleaning products. He worked door to door, mainly in Black neighborhoods.
And here's the twist here. He didn't just sell. He studied the margins. He studied them so well that he even noticed how much money was flowing out of the black communities and into white-owned manufacturers.
And that really bothered him, ladies and gentlemen. Like Booker T. Washington before him, he once said, if you're not manufacturing, you're not in control. That's just not business advice. That's a philosophy of personal and economic sovereignty.
In 1939, he bought the company.
Yes, he did. And let me just say that again for the people in the back. A black man in pre-war America bought a manufacturing company. A black man in pre-war America who bought a manufacturing company. Think about that. There's something to be said for that. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Deneen?
I would. He spent $150,000 and renamed it the Fuller Products Company.
Fuller believed deeply in capitalism, not the abstract version, the practical one.
That's right. He encouraged black Americans to become distributors, franchise owners, and entrepreneurs. He built a national sales force, largely black, when mainstream corporations wouldn't hire them in executive roles.
He was blunt. He told his audiences, don't spend your money where you can't work. That line still hits.
Yeah. He expanded into hair care, beauty products, and household goods. At its peak, Fuller Products employed thousands and generated millions in annual revenue. That's impressive.
Yes, it is, Dr. Weaver. And remember, this is mid-century America. Redlining, restricted covenants, limited access to capital. These were all discriminatory business moves. Now, redlining refuses loans and permits to minority neighborhoods. Covenants restrict where African Americans work and live, and banks charge higher interest on loans to non-white customers.
During the Depression and World War II, he wasn't just surviving, he was scaling the heights. And here's something that people miss. A man from Louisiana, as I said, with a sixth grade education, was competing in industries dominated by multinational giants. Think about the confidence that takes.
Think about the work that that takes. Think about how clever it was. Now, he eventually purchased stakes in banks, insurance companies, and even media ventures. He believed in vertical integration. What does that mean? It means controlling the manufacturing, the selling, the distribution, the transport of an industry.
And Mr. Fuller here was also quite outspoken. In 1955, he criticized aspects of the civil rights movement's approach, arguing that economic empowerment had to come first.
And that made him controversial. Some activists felt he was too friendly to free market rhetoric. Some conservatives felt he was too focused on black economic autonomy. The most controversial speech he made was to the National Association of Manufacturers when he became its first African American member in 1963. Fuller emphasized the need for African Americans to build their own businesses and hire their own people. In his words, have something to offer. Some activists felt incorrectly that this was an endorsement of segregation. He had to walk a very narrow ledge.
Yeah. In, let's see, the 1960s, Fuller was one of the wealthiest African American businessmen in the country.
Yes, he absolutely was, Dr. Weaver. The racist White Citizens Council boycotted his business after he purchased the famous French or Jean Medal line of cosmetics. When Southern whites discovered black ownership, boycotts damaged that part of his holdings and became a catalyst for his later troubles.
Yeah. A number of difficulties caused a decline beginning in the late 1960s. Some overextension of financial investments, problems tied to his ownership of Chicago's South Center commercial complex, including the Regal Theater, contributed to his losses and even bankruptcy.
That's right, Dr. Weaver. And multiple accounts even say that Fuller sold high interest promissory notes tied to his business, and the SEC charged him with selling unregistered notes. He was reportedly put on probation. A contemporaneous report on the federal charges indicates that the case involves selling Fuller products, promissory notes, without registration, and the indictment alleged inadequate disclosure to buyers. One biography notes a campaign that encouraged customers not to pay what they owed, leaving Fuller with over $1 million in unpaid accounts, worsening his cash crunch. Many tycoons vacillate between boom and bust cycles.
So you're saying that this was a normal process of business, Chandler, that there's boom and bust?
Absolutely, Dr. Weaver.
Yeah, I think you're right too.
Yes.
He certainly is right. Fuller was also trying to develop some poor neighborhoods around the South Side, and he'd extended credit to people to get their own businesses started and was never repaid. Periods of great success and struggle placed him along many other African American business tycoons, including Madam C.J. Walker, who built a great hair care empire earlier in the 20th century. Fuller represents the next wave, the post Depression industrial scale national distribution corporation.
Yes, indeed. He believed in disciplined presentation, dress well, speak precisely, own your craft.
He pushed against stereotypes, not by just plain old rhetoric alone, but with balance sheets to back it up.
There's something profoundly old school about the man. Work hard, own something, build institutions, hire your own people. Don't wait for permission. He certainly wasn't naive about racism. He wasn't accepting of discrimination in any way, but he simply believed ownership gave people leverage.
His empire eventually declined in later decades as competition increased and markets shifted. In addition to the somewhat controversial practices that we've already mentioned, in 1970, it was discovered a trusted associate forged his name on billing for government contracts. Out of pity for the man's family, Fuller paid the fine out of his own pocket and even refused to fire him. I don't know if that was a very smart business move. Chandler?
Well, I have to say, it was being very loyal to his friend and employee, but like you said, Dr. Weaver, as far as a business move, I don't think that was too smart. I have to agree with you.
I do also. I think he saw it as an act of charity, but I mean, that's going a little too far in my point of view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, the charity aspect is really good, but just not from a business standpoint. It was what caused some of the decline. But we have to remember here that decline doesn't erase impact.
The lesson isn't perfection, it's proof. Keep trying. Proof that industrial leadership, even among oppressed people, was possible even in a constrained system.
S.B. Fuller's life forces a question. What does economic freedom mean?
Is wealth a shield, a tool, a responsibility?
Maybe it's all three. He believed above all that dignity came from production, from making something valuable and tangible that people could use. In an era when many doors were locked, he built his own hallway. That's not just business, that's a personal strategy.
Mhm. And that's something you just don't hear enough about.
That's exactly right, Dr. Weaver, because sometimes the quiet revolution isn't a march, it's a manufacturing line.
Sometimes the boldest protest is ownership. There's another part of S.B. Fuller's story that doesn't get nearly enough attention. We did a podcast on this. In 1946 in Athens, Tennessee, returning African Americans and poor white veterans were pushing back against entrenched local political corruption. It was one of those moments where men who had fought fascism overseas came home and said, "We're not living under this idea here."
And Black veterans in particular faced a double barrier. They had worn the uniform, they had served, but when they tried to vote, they ran into intimidation, poll taxes, and raw obstruction.
And yes, and S.B. Fuller publicly supported the principle behind those veterans' efforts, the right of black citizens to vote freely and without harassment.
That matters, ladies and gentlemen. He certainly believed in ownership, as we've said, but he also understood that ownership without a political voice is far too fragile. He saw voting as part of economic security. If you can't protect your rights at the ballot box, your business can be regulated, taxed, or restricted without your consent.
And this wasn't abstract theory. This was happening in real towns with real men who had just come home from war.
Now, Fuller's stance reinforced a larger message that he had been trying to convey for decades. Economic independence and civic participation go together, kind of like peas and carrots. One without the other leaves you exposed.
As I said, if you want the full story of the veterans' fight in Athens, including how local corruption was challenged before Truman's civil rights initiatives and before the integration of professional sports, we did an entire episode on that. It's one of those moments where ordinary people said, the country belongs to us too.
So S.B. Fuller didn't just build factories, he backed the congressional campaign of his neighbor, physician, and activist, Howard, in 1958.
T.M. Howard was a friend of Jim Nabrett, the future president of Howard University.
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Deneen. Fuller backed citizens who insisted that democracy function the way that it was promised.
He believed dignity required, as I said before, a paycheck and a ballot. That's the through line tonight: ownership, production, responsibility. Not grievances alone or rhetoric alone. Build, vote, and protect. That was Fuller's rhythm. Now, here's something most people don't know. At the height of the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955-56, when African American citizens had withdrawn their fares and were walking miles to work, two African American millionaires made a bold proposal. Our old friend Samuel Fuller and Birmingham businessman A.G. Gaston, who was a friend of Dr. Martin Luther King's, offered to buy the bus system in order to integrate it.
Yeah, let that one sink in. Instead of just protesting segregation, they proposed ownership as the solution.
Absolutely. If black passengers made up the majority of the customer base, then why not operate the system themselves? Why not end segregation not through endless litigation, but through acquisition?
It was pure Fuller logic. Don't just challenge the system, control it, buy it, reorganize it. These two tycoons, Fuller and Gaston, offered to pay $3 million for the Montgomery Bus Company. That's $36,300,000 in today's money.
The city leadership wasn't interested. Political resistance, racial hostility, and legal barriers blocked the idea.
But the proposal itself tells you everything you need to know about Fuller's worldview. He saw capital as leverage. He believed that segregation could be weakened, not only by court rulings, but by transferring ownership.
And just look at the symbolism for a minute. Two black industrialists purchasing the very buses that had enforced humiliation on their people for decades and turning them into instruments of pride and dignity. It didn't happen, but the offer was real. And it reminds us the civil rights era was not ideologically monolithic. There were multiple strategies: grassroots protests, economic development, legal challenges, sit ins, entrepreneurial work, sometimes working in tension and sometimes in tandem together.
He backed economic empowerment nationally.
And in Montgomery, he showed he was willing to stake capital to end injustice. He believed economic sovereignty was not separate from civil rights, it was the foundation under it. Because sometimes the quiet revolution isn't only in the streets, it's in the banks and boardrooms as well.
Well, listen, thank you for listening to Things You Don't Know, and we hope you have enjoyed and learned something about this iconic African American businessman, Mr. Fuller.
Absolutely. And y'all come on back. We got some other good stuff coming your way right soon.
Come back soon and leave a like and comment, folks. Take care, everybody.